The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the disappearance of a mother of three, Autumn Walshe. She's never been found, but her husband has been charged with her murder and will stand trial on Court TV this December. Here's the story. Autumn Walshe was born in Serbia in 1983. After graduating from a university in Belgrade, she eventually moved to the United States in 2005. She became a dual citizen. Anna worked in the hospitality industry, working at various hotels. And it was at one of those hotels where she met Brian Walshe. In 2016, Brian and Anna got married and started a family. Together, they were raising three young boys. In 2022, Anna obtained a position with a real estate company, which forced her to split her time between her home with her family in Massachusetts and Washington, D.C. This move, along with Brian's indictment related to an art scam, put a lot of strain on the relationship. Then, after spending New Year's having dinner with friends, Anna seemingly vanished. She was reported missing by her employer in D.C. and by Brian on January 4th. Investigators suspected Brian and executed a search warrant, which uncovered evidence they believe proves he murdered and dismembered Anna, despite the fact that her remains have never been found. Brian has been charged with Anna's murder and is locked up waiting for his upcoming trial on Court TV. And we're getting ready for this one. This is a big one. Three children who don't have their mom around, and now dad's charged with murder. So there's a lot at stake in this case. One of the issues that has delayed the case for a bit has been the mental status of Brian Walshe, the accused. But he has been deemed competent to stand trial, which means right here, right now, he understands what is happening. So the trial is set, it's locked, it's loaded. You'll see it on Court TV. Let's bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas, who's been looking into this story for us. Let's start first. Let's start with the evidence in this case and the alleged incriminating internet searches in this one.
Well, Vinny, of course, the prosecutors say they have plenty of physical evidence, but they have a treasure trove of digital evidence as well, according to them. Now, specific to those internet searches, the interesting thing about those is that none of these searches were done on any of his personal devices, but done on his son's iPad. And Vinny, that in itself may be evidence of trying to be deceitful if a jury hears that. So let's take a listen to prosecutors walk through his searches on the last day that Brian Walshe says he saw Anna, which would be New Year's Day of 2023. Take a listen.
At 4:55 a.m. on January 1st, he searched how long before a body starts to smell. At 4:58 a.m., how to stop a body from decomposing. At 5:20 a.m., he searched how to embalm a body. At 5:47 a.m., 10 ways to dispose of a dead body if you really need to. At 6:25 a.m. on the 1st, how long for someone to be missing to inherit. At 6:34 a.m. on the 1st, can you throw away body parts?
So, Vinny, that was New Year's Day, but the searches don't stop there, and those are some pretty damning searches. Let's take a listen to some of the searches he made on January 2nd, the following day. Take a listen.
There were also more Google searches on January 2nd. At 12:45 p.m., hacksaw best tool to dismember. At 1:10 p.m., can you be charged with murder without a body? At 1:14 p.m., can you identify a body with broken teeth?
And Vinny, what's important to note is that at the final pretrial hearing before jury selection begins, prosecutors have said that they have a whole new batch of searches. They say they have 1,000 pages that they have not revealed from a MacBook Pro that they found in the Walshe home. All of those new searches that no one's seen, they plan to use in the trial.
Yeah, could be more devastating evidence. But that alone, Cody, is pretty revealing. You know, we talk about where this case is. This is going to be in the same courthouse as the Karen Reed trial. And we knew in that case, at least from, and it's kind of flipped on its head, right? The big Google search, "How's long to die in the cold," was huge for the defense initially. Well, here now, we've got ones that the prosecution is going to use. And that brings us to the first question in our investigation. How is the defense going to explain these searches? Like, how do you explain those? Let me bring in some guests to help us answer those questions. Joining us tonight, a Massachusetts attorney, Rick Grundy, is with us, and Cambridge-based attorney, victims advocate, and scholar, Margot Lindauer. She's currently on the faculty at Vermont Law and Graduate Schools. Great to have you both here. As Cody was going through that, in my mind, I got this image of a man doing these frantic searches in a frenzy and a panic. And that's the picture that was painted for me, right? Rick, how does a defense attorney begin, or at least try to begin, to explain these searches?
I was hoping, Vinny, that you were going to start with the professor, because that's a pretty difficult question. You got to assume that in this day and age, they're going to be able to very accurately pinpoint, timestamp when these searches were done. Before, when that was a little less specific, you could always go for well, I knew the police were coming after me on this, so I started looking into different things. But as we noted in the prelim, they're stamped the night that she was last seen alive. So somebody got into the computer. It wasn't him. His son's got issues. I don't know. It's a tough nut to crack.
All right, Margot, is this going to be another case in Massachusetts where we're alleging a cover-up and a frame job here? Like, what is the defense going to say about these searches?
Well, the searches are incredibly damning and very, very specific and very time sequential in terms of their specificity and the timing around Anna's disappearance. I think the defense is going to have to create a reasonable doubt, potentially in other ways. There are other challenges in this case that the defense is going to be focusing on.
Give me one. Give me one, Margot. Go ahead.
The questionable conduct of the police department, for example.
Okay, I got you.
That is in question here. The fact that there's no body or no body was identified. I think there are questions about some of Anna's behavior around the timing of her disappearance. There's other ways to create reasonable doubt, but I'm with you that these searches are very problematic and very specific and multiple. There's not just one.
Right.
There's not just how long to die in the cold.
No, it's much, much more than that. So, Rick, is this a case where maybe we'll see the old, look over here, don't look over there, like kind of deal? Like you go after certain issues that'll make people scratch their heads a little bit and say, okay, maybe that doesn't make 100% sense to me, and just try to keep them from focusing on the internet searches? Because me, you're a former prosecutor too, Rick, like, we're going to ride that thing all the way. Like, I am not letting go of that as a prosecutor. Like, there is no explanation for this, ladies and gentlemen. There is zero explanation for this. So is it possible? Can a Massachusetts jury fall victim to that? To look over here, don't look over there?
It happens all the time, absolutely. And I think the professor hit on quite a few of them right there, is that they're going to start little fires all around. And as you said, it's just a distraction technique.
Do they bring in an expert? Do they bring in an expert to try to undermine the timestamp or something? Like, I'm comparing this to everything I see in Karen Reed, right? In Karen Reed, they brought in their experts. They said, no, it wasn't at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was actually at 6:30 a.m. So is someone going to come in and try to do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the first line of defense I would look into. If I could discredit these text messages or emails or whatever searches based on the timing of it. The cops had already knocked on my door. Proctor was yelling all kinds of things at me. We know about Proctor. He was accusing me of this, that, and the other thing. So I started doing research into that, for which I'd already been accused. It's still, there's so much of it there that you have to have multiple fires, but I still think you just come back around in that closing argument. I love the fact that it was how to dispose of body if you have to.
If you have to.
And I have to.
And he has to. Margot, is it, where do you think the temperature is right now? Like, we went through the whole Karen Read trial. This is the same jurisdiction. And, I mean, we all experienced, there was a lot of questioning of the government. There was questioning of police. There was questioning of the prosecution. And I think healthy skepticism is good. Where do you think the public is right now, especially up there in that section of the world, in terms of questioning the government?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think that there is a lot of energy around Massachusetts cases, particularly being here in Massachusetts, but this is not Karen Read. This is not the media circus that Karen Read was. There is not the same level of interest, and there's not the same level of excitement over Brian that there was over Karen. And Brian Walshe has, let's just kind of say what it is. He has two attorneys. Karen Read had many, many attorneys and many, many lay people working on her behalf to craft a narrative about her theory of the case. He does not have that.
Yeah, she also had about 700 people dressed in pink outside the courthouse that were supporting her, raising money, etc.
Yeah, I did not. I heard that there was no one outside the courthouse this morning.
Yeah, not surprising. All right, Margot Lindauer, great to see you. Thank you so much. Rick's going to stick around. Coming up next, where is Autumn Walshe?
What's been presented so far is pretty terrifying.
The Court TV podcast will return.
The defendant's behavior before that time, approximately 6:30 in the morning on January 1st, his behavior before that time when he says Anna left the house shows that he was planning and premeditating and had the intent to kill her.
It's the long-awaited trial of Brian Walshe, which will be beginning here on Court TV within the next couple of weeks. This case, you think about Anna Walshe comes to this country, builds a life for herself, and builds a career, and most importantly, builds a family. And now she's not here to be there with her 3 children, raising them. And she's gone. She's never been found. Let's check back in with Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Let's start first with prosecutors. Where do prosecutors think that Anna Walshe is?
Well, Vinnie, you just mentioned it. Prosecutors, her body's never been found, but they allege that Brian Walshe dismembered her and dumped her somewhere. We just don't know where that is. But investigators do say on January 2nd, the day after Brian Walshe says that he last saw his wife, Anna Walshe, prosecutors say that he went to a Home Depot 9 miles away from his house and spent $450 on cleaning supplies, mops, brushes, and all kinds of cleaning chemicals, supplies that prosecutors say he used to clean up the crime scene. Vinny, so let's take a listen to prosecutors talk about that in a previous hearing.
He is seen purchasing numerous items, including a Lennox high-tension hacksaw, 48 terry cloth towels, 200 disposable rags, trash bags. In the Swampscott dumpster, they found items, including a set of Volkswagen keys, Anna Walshe's COVID vaccination card. Also located in the dumpster, Your Honor, were rugs. These rugs contain red-brown staining as well, and a piece of a Gucci necklace consistent with one that Anna Walshe wore.
So, Vinny, all that cleaning supplies that he got from the Home Depot, but investigators say they also have him on surveillance. And we have a map of where they say he was. Now, this is where he was 16 miles away from his home in Cohasset, Massachusetts, down to Abington. Massachusetts. That's where investigators say he drove to an apartment complex in Abington, 16 miles from his home, and is seen on surveillance video throwing away a heavy garbage bag into a dumpster. That was on January 3rd, Vinny. And a couple days later, on the 6th and the 7th, police searched the Walshe property, collecting a lot of evidence from the basement, including DNA, blood evidence, and 2 knives. That is in the basement of the Walshe home. But Vinny, what I want to do now is take a listen to one of Anna's friends talking about how terrifying of an ordeal this has all been.
To think that something like this had happened to her is soul-shattering, because not only does it involve her, but now these boys have been stripped of their mother. Regardless if he ended up doing it or not, right? And we'll find out throughout this entire process, as it's yet to be confirmed. But what's been presented so far is pretty terrifying. When you know the truth and how brutal that it can be, as we're starting to inch towards that, that was me today. It was like, I guess I'm full of rage, but it's one step closer to the truth of what happened to her, and that deserves to be known, at least for those boys, especially for the rest of their lives, instead of them wondering what happened.
So Vinny, $450 on cleaning supplies from Home Depot the day after he says he last saw her, surveillance 16 miles away, throwing a big heavy trash bag into a dumpster. It's kind of unclear who's going to dispute all of this stuff that all arrows point to him.
Yeah, and the hacksaw. All right, what is the defense saying about where she is?
Well, again, of course, Brian is saying he last saw her that January 1st, 2023, when she left that morning on a flight to Washington, D.C. for work. That's according to him. Now, his defense attorney has also noted that there is no indication of if she died or how she died. And they also point to the fact that there was no murder weapon that has been recovered, Vinny.
All right, Cody Thomas, thanks so much. All that brings us to our next question, which was the original question in this case. Where is Anna Walshe? Here to help with our investigation, Massachusetts Attorney Rick Rundy still with us, and joining us, mitigation specialist, defense investigator Monica Jordan. All right, Monica, let me start first with what the defense is saying. If she got on a flight, like isn't that pretty easy to prove or to track down? Like, don't they keep track of who gets on airplanes?
Absolutely, that would be the easiest thing to track down, but I think she left her car in Boston from when she flew, or left it in D.C. from when she flew back to Boston. So someone had to have picked her up. Somebody had to have taken her there. There's no Lyft, Uber, or taxi receipts. He doesn't tell law enforcement that he took her to the airport. And I just don't know who leaves at 1:30 in the morning after a dinner party that has a work emergency. She's in property management and real estate. She's not a trauma surgeon. So I don't know what emergency she could have at work that would require her to leave in the middle of the night.
Yeah, probably could be handled on the phone if there was an emergency. All right, Rick Grundy, a hacksaw, $400 in cleaning supplies. This is called circumstantial evidence. But I'm trying to think of the alternative explanation for any of that stuff, and I'm at a loss here. I don't know. Was he going to carve up some of the Andy Warhol fake paintings that he was producing?
Possibly. Maybe add some nice frames to create. You know, if you have a beautiful frame, don't look at the picture as much. You know, I always got a kick out of when people would say, all the prosecution has is circumstantial evidence. What's not circumstantial evidence basically boils down to eyewitness testimony, eyewitness evidence. And you know what? When it comes to homicide, rarely does the person look for an audience before he commits a homicide. So
you've used that line, Rick, haven't you? You've used that line in a courtroom, haven't you?
Were you there?
Yeah,
I don't have to admit to it. But, you know, that's how murder cases are proven all the time. And here, on this line, I know you have heard, you get a bunch of bricks, you start making a wall. I see a very strong wall being built with the bricks in this case.
Monica, let's flip it over, though. Are you surprised that law enforcement and the prosecution here has not been able to track down her remains?
No, because I think she's in several pieces and it's been dispersed among 16 miles away from the home. I mean, the government does not need a body to convict him, unfortunately. I mean, I've had several cases where there's been no body and they convicted the defendant and the client based on circumstantial evidence. There is a lot that he has to overcome, and the defense has a whole host of challenges, primarily that Home Depot run and the fact that he's driving places where he's not supposed to be going because it's in violation of the conditions of his federal release. He's already been indicted for fraud, so he's potentially on the verge of being a convicted liar with moral turpitude issues. So I don't know even how you could put him on the stand to explain any of this stuff. You talked in the earlier segment about explaining away the searches. The searches are the least of your worries. I mean, you've got him on video buying a hacksaw and cleaning supplies in a Tyvek suit. I can't imagine the New Year's Eve party was so overwhelmingly great that you need all of those accoutrements to clean up afterwards. Plus, where's the wife?
Yeah. But let me ask you, Rick, how much time do prosecutors have to spend in proving that she's not alive? Like, how are they going to do that? Now, this is someone who has dual citizenship, not originally from the United States. I don't know if the defense is going to try to allude to the fact that maybe she went back to her homeland and was just walking away from her life. But how much time and how do you prove to this jury that, hey, she's not walking through that door?
Yeah, and in addition to that, as we said, they want to get into the fact that she was having an affair and, that maybe she's the type of person that would pick up and leave. Unfortunately for them, it does nothing to dissuade the jury from focusing in on all the evidence we've been talking about. So I'll tell you, the first case in Massachusetts that convicted somebody of a homicide without a body occurred in Norfolk County a little over 20 years ago. The defendant's name was Joseph Romano. He, too, dismembered his wife. He used the next-door neighbor's Sawzall, and he cleaned it up all nice and well. Unfortunately, he didn't open up the casings, and the blood, which had the DNA, got pulled into the machinery. So there was also enough blood soaked through the wood floor that a medical examiner could say that a person could not survive and lose that much blood. The blood matched her. So I know that there was also a spot up a dumpster by his mother's apartment up on the North Shore, just a couple miles from where I am, where they recovered some bloody items as well. So that's what you got to do. You know, all this blood, whether it's on the carpet, whether it's on the clothing, whether it's on the other things, I don't know the quantity of it, but it certainly is enough to get DNA, which I'm sure they're going to present, that these scattered pieces of, whether it's from the house or clothing, all come back to her. All were brought to these different areas by him. I don't know if they can get to a quantity or amount of bleeding, but you draw all from that. And again, where is this mother of three? You know, she's not on the plane. She's not with her car. She's not in Eastern Europe.
Big thanks, Rick Grundy, Monica Jordan. Great to have you on the program. Thanks so much. Still to come, what impact will Brian Walshe's mother have on this trial?
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the disappearance of Autumn Walshe, a mother of three. Her husband's been charged with her murder, and the trial will take place in the same courthouse where Karen Reed was found not guilty. Here's the story. Brian Walshe seemed like he was a wealthy, successful businessman until he got caught up in a major art scam. The feds indicted him on charges of selling fake Warhol paintings. At the same time this was happening, his wife Anna was doing extremely well at work. She landed a lucrative position with a realty company that had her splitting her time between home with Brian and their three boys and Washington, D.C., where her employer was. The federal indictment and the commuting to work put a strain on their relationship. Then things went really bad when Anna seemingly vanished after New Year's Eve with friends in 2022, going into 2023. The investigation resulted in the arrest of Brian Walshe for the murder of Anna, and he is now locked up waiting for his trial on Court TV to begin. And we're expecting those opening statements that first week of December, perhaps December 1st. So keep an eye on that, folks. I think about what's going on inside this household, and the source of the tension seems kind of obvious, right? He's the man. He portrays himself as very successful, but he got caught up as a fraudster and indicted by the feds. And the feds don't indict unless they have the goods against you. So likelihood was that he would likely get convicted of those charges with selling these fake Warhol paintings. Bizarre stuff. And then on the other hand, his wife is doing very well, but she's traveling for work. She's got to go down to D.C., and she's the successful one. He's not. And you see this tension. And then there's jealousy and everything else that goes on behind closed doors. All right, let's bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas, who's been taking a close look at this one. Let's talk about Brian Walshe's mother. And I know she is a supporter who seems to be there all the time for him. What do we know about his mom?
Well, Vinny, she is a big supporter, so much so that she hired a private investigator to look into Anna's behavior before her disappearance. Now, of course, her name is Diane Walshe. She was in court at the final pretrial hearing before jury selection begins, taking a whole bunch of notes. Now, when the issue of this private investigator came up, the judge asked her to step out of the courtroom because she is currently on the defense's witness list. Now, she stepped out. She came back in the courtroom when she returned, and when Brian stood up and was led out of the courtroom following the hearing, she stood up and blew him several kisses. We can see it right here. We see him walking out here, nodding toward her. Look at her blowing the kisses at him. So there's definite support between mother and son here in this case. Now, Vinnie, prosecutors say they plan to introduce the fact that she hired a private investigator to look into Anna's behavior as proof and as evidence that Brian suspected Anna of having an affair. But Brian's defense says that Brian knew nothing about his mother, Diane, hiring a private investigator at all. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out once this trial gets underway.
Gets right back into what's happening behind closed doors. There's some jealousy, there's some tension, and there are suspicions potentially. All right, thanks so much, Cody. That brings us to the next question in our investigation. What impact will Brian Walshe's mother have on the trial? Is this an important witness? Here to help answer that question, Massachusetts criminal defense attorney Peter Ellikin and Boston attorney, former prosecutor Catherine Loftus. All right, Catherine, what are your thoughts here about Brian Walshe's mother? He doesn't seem to have a lot of support, but mom is absolutely there for him, but apparently a fact witness in all of this.
I think it'll be interesting. The Commonwealth said today that they did not have her on their witness list, which the judge seemed somewhat surprised by. The defense does have her on the list. You know, she will be involved whether she testifies or not. Obviously, she plays a role supporting her son, you know, while she's in the audience. But she does have sort of a part in the Commonwealth's attempt to prove that Brian Walshe had some intention around what he allegedly did to Anna Walshe. And that's based on, you know, the hiring of the private investigator by his mom. The defense will try to say that he didn't know she did, or, you know, that he didn't have any connection or request for her to do that. But he did, in fact, give her the number and information for the individual who Anna was having an affair with. We also have the rug that was found that they believe to be a match to the rug in the home of the Walshes that was found nearly 40 miles away at his mom's house. So whether she actually is called to be a witness, I think we still will hear testimony from other witnesses that involve some of her actions throughout, you know, their relationship and what happened after.
Peter Ellikin, is it a sign of desperation if you have to call your mommy to the stand?
Well, this is not clear whether she'll take the stand or not. They're going to really have to tie him and her in together on this investigation. According to the defense, hey, she just did that on her own. And even when she met with the investigator, she said, now, I don't want my son to find out about this at all. So, and later on, supposedly, as the defense says, he finds out about it and he thought it was funny, and he even told Anna, his wife. So if she's going to be investigated by a private eye, why tip her off? So right now, they're going to have to, in order to really bring this in, they're going to have to tie them together, that he knew she was investigating, he was part of it. And right now, his defense counsel says he didn't direct it, he didn't have anything to do with it, it wasn't anything to do with him at all. And she's talking about, I think in the grand jury testimony, somebody mentioned that she wanted her investigated, Anna, because something a psychic told her. So I'm not sure she's going to be brought in at all. If she can be brought in and there's some tie to him, then he's got huge trouble, because that absolutely fits into the narrative that he thought she was having an affair, or he was going to be going to prison, and she'd take the children, and she had this great job in D.C., and that would be his big motive. So if you can tie him and her in together with this investigation, then he's got big problems. Otherwise, at the moment, we haven't heard that.
Yeah, you think there's any chance, Catherine, if she's still on the defense witness list, that she gets called in somehow to help Brian Walshe to maybe either talk about the nature of the relationship or talk about Anna without, because I don't think he's going to take the witness stand. I don't think he can. I mean, he might. Anything's possible. But do you think they may attempt to perhaps use her to get in some of the things that may help him without putting him on the stand?
You know, they might try, but, you know, I think it's always difficult when you put, you know, someone who's obviously, you know, in support of this is her son, if she gets on the witness stand. I'm not sure if she doesn't have any independent information to, you know, testify to that would be a benefit to him, you know, what this certain fact about how she saw something different than what the Commonwealth is alleging. I think ultimately it would be seen as a, you know, a mother trying to save her son who's charged with murder. And I'm not sure in the long run how persuasive that is to a jury.
Yeah, and if she's on the witness list, Peter, does that mean she can't be in the courtroom during the trial?
That is true. And right now the defense says they have her on the witness list. They said they're just erring on the side of caution here. They do not know, they said, whether they're going to call her or not. They just put her in there anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, the optics of that, Peter, you can't necessarily like, right? If there's no one seemingly visually there supporting Brian Walshe.
That looks terrible, because the jury, remember, picks up every nuance. They will, if they look and say, gee, he has no friends or family here, obviously he must be a bad guy, or they all think he's guilty. They don't support him. And so that the optics are terrible. It's really good to have your cheering section in there at all times. Otherwise, it's, you know, and juries, as we know, they pick up every little nuance. They'll say, oh, that lawyer shows up every day. He's the guy who never shines his shoes, or, oh, he's wearing that same tie again. They're sitting there for hours. They pick up everything. So they will be very aware if he's got no supporters, that just looks terrible for him.
And that's why Peter Elkin has 40 ties in his office, just in case. All right, coming up next. What role will Trooper Proctor play in this trial?
Again, Mr. Jackson, it was a poor choice of words and a joke.
This is the Court TV Podcast.
So these came from me. From all accounts, he didn't do anything wrong. She's a whack job. Yes, she's a babe. Weird Fall River accent, though. No ass. Leaks poo. These came from me. Funny, I'm going through his client's phone. No nude so far. I hate that man. I truly hate him.
Trooper Michael Proctor, when he was employed by the Massachusetts State Police, obviously big role in the Karen Reed case, actually ended up helping the defense more than the prosecution in that one. But he was a state trooper who was assigned to the Norfolk County DA's office. So he had his hand in a lot of investigations and a lot of cases, including the case involving Brian Walshe. So let's bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Let's lay out what Trooper Proctor's role was in this case and in this investigation.
Well, yeah, Vinny, we know him from that big Karen Reed case, also had a hand in this case against Brian Walshe. Now, within this case, the defense wants to see evidence related to Trooper Proctor, specifically some of his phone data, which is similar evidence that led to him getting fired following the Karen Reed case for misconduct. Now, Proctor is also on the defense's witness list here in this case. Take a listen to some of the defense attorneys talking about his relevance to this case and the timing of the federal investigation against him.
And the reason I bring that up is because the Commonwealth now has stood up and they've said this before, they're not going to call Proctor. The point is that the defendant has a right to show that the investigation has flaws in it. And what we're hearing from the government is they don't want to call Proctor, the case officer. It's not because he didn't do important things. It's because Proctor, along with the other troopers he worked with, seemed to be engaged, at least in the Reed case, but they're engaged in this type of professional misconduct that they got investigated for.
What we're able to determine is that Trooper Proctor, who was the lead investigator on this case, the moment he stepped foot into investigating Brian Walshe and the disappearance of his wife, he knew he was under federal investigation. And so his bias, his motive, anything or his integrity is forefront for him. The Norfolk County District Attorney's Office, they control homicide investigations. They work with the state police with CPAC. So now the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office knew that Proctor was under federal investigation, specifically for how he investigates supervision, etc. He now is the case officer in this matter while his case is pending. So that's one of a myriad reasons why not only are these documents relevant, they could very well be exculpatory.
So Vinnie, he may be disgraced, he may have gotten fired following that Karen Reed case and all that came of that, but with this case, he's still listed as a defense witness, so we'll see.
What a moment that would be, right, if they call him? All right, Cody, thanks so much. All right, that brings us to the final question in our investigation, which is, what role will Trooper Proctor play in this trial? And yes, I know he's not a trooper anymore, but he was a trooper during the course of the investigation of Brian Walshe and the disappearance of Anna Walshe. Still here, helping us with our investigation, a criminal defense attorney, Peter Ellikin, and Boston attorney, former prosecutor Catherine Loftus. All right, Catherine, he's on the defense witness list. What role do you think Proctor will play in this case?
You know, I think they might have success at using sort of the Karen Reed defense relative to Proctor. If you recall in that case, Michael Proctor was never called by the Commonwealth in the second trial. The defense didn't call him, but what they got to do through, introduction of testimony around him was present this sort of idea that everything he touched was tainted, and therefore you should not be able to rely on the investigation as a whole. And I think that's essentially what the defense seems to be doing in this case. It was something along the lines that defense counsel said today, we're not really going to go into the specifics of Michael Proctor, aside from the fact that once his credibility was impeached, the Commonwealth moved away from him. And so they want to point out that, hey, even the district attorney's office has such little faith in this individual that they're not going to present information and testimony through him. And so therefore, neither should you rely on him.
Peter Ellikin, would you call him for the defense?
Oh, if I was defense, I would have a field day with him. I mean, there's nobody whose reputation is worse as a disgraced bad apple in every way imaginable, not just for the bias and prejudice and the misconduct, but also that he just doesn't do a good investigation. And I would be asking, did you follow the leads? Or was it like Karen Reed? Or did you look to see if there was another suspect? Those kinds of things come up. However, there is kind of a little problem here, though, is that even though the defense did the right thing, as I think in 19 other cases where Proctor's involved, all the attorneys wanted to find out his phone records and all kinds of things to see if there was any more misconduct. At the moment, they haven't found anything really on this particular Walshe case. So other than him being a horrendous reputation. Do they have any evidence that he did anything wrong here on this investigation? And I think they'd have to kind of bring that in, and they certainly diligently have been looking for it.
Let me ask you, Catherine, if he did get called by the defense, he's been fired by the Massachusetts State Police. He no longer works. I don't know what happened to his pension. But he's been pretty much disgraced by the agencies that he spent his career working for. What do you think his attitude would be on the witness stand, and what do you think his goal would be on the witness stand in this case?
Well, you know, I think it's interesting because what's happened sort of in the interim, as Peter was saying, is that a number of new documents in discovery have been turned over as a result of all of these attorneys in different cases wanting to get his, previous texts. He was ordered by Judge Doolin to turn over his cell phone. What he did was produce 12, 13 years, I believe they said, of, text messages, videos, largely what seems to be even more problematic information outside of the Karen Read case. So I might not be surprised if he were to plead the fifth. We don't know if there's any, we don't know what's in that discovery. There's a number of different defendants. We know that much of it is as concerning as Karen Read's case. And so, given the fact that he's been investigated a number of times already, I wouldn't be surprised if someone gives him the advice to invoke his fifth.
Peter Ellikin, what do you think his approach would be if he got called to the stand? What would his attitude be? Where would his loyalties be?
Well, certainly he was brought up in here. First, he was suspended by the state police, and then there were hearings, and they fired him. So he might not be in love with the state police and the prosecution, particularly when the prosecution has had nothing good to say about him, and none of the prosecutors want to call him for any of these cases, like they didn't want to call him for the Karen Read case either. And so I'm not quite sure where he is mentally at the moment, but there may not be a love lost here between he and the state police or the prosecution. Usually, you can see they're all kind of in lockstep. Usually, state police, prosecutors, they're going to back each other up to the back to back against the wall and take care of each other. This may not be a situation like this. He really has nothing to lose. He's already been booted out and disgraced by the prosecution and by the state police itself. So that thin blue line of loyalty may not be there for him. So it's very possible that. Well, I don't even. You got me kind of tongue-tied here. It's a wild card what he would do.
Yeah,
he
it
still
absolutely
probably doesn't like defendants. And he doesn't like defendants, but then again, he may not like the guys who gave him the boot and didn't back him up, and so he may hate everybody. I don't know.
Peter Ellikin, we like you. Catherine Loftus, we like you as well. Thank you both so much. Great to speak with you on this big case happening in that same courthouse. Whole lot of circumstantial evidence in this case. However, if the defense shifts the focus from the evidence to the investigators, there could be some problems for prosecutors. That's why this case will be an interesting test on where Massachusetts jurors are in the aftermath of that Karen Read not guilty verdict. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. There you have it. If you want to see more in-depth reporting on the latest true crime stories, you can see me every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments. Thank you so much for downloading. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.